I'm Walter Greenleaf. I'm a neuroscientist and medical product developer working at the Stanford Virtual Human Interaction Lab. It's my pleasure to be with you today here at ViveCon 2021. In addition to my work at Stanford Virtual Human Interaction Lab, I have the pleasure of working with several other clinical groups around the university and healthcare network. I'm also the Director of Technology at the National Mental Health Innovation Center at the University of Colorado. One of the areas that I'm passionate about and that drives my commitment to developing new medical applications of VR and AR technology is an awareness of the looming healthcare crisis engendered by an aging population. Since the turn of the century, the US population has doubled, and yet we've had a declining proportionate of caregivers. Family size has gotten smaller. As a result, we're demographically top heavy. And if we do the math and look 10 to 15 years downstream, we see that we simply do not have enough systems in place, both through our healthcare infrastructure and also through family members and caregivers to support an aging population. So we can't do anything about the demographics, but what we can do is get more efficient at how we apply technology to support our aging senior population. It's with this in mind that in addition to my academic work, I also have had the pleasure of working with a number of seed stage and early stage medical product companies applying VR and AR technology to healthcare. And in the last few years, we've also seen a number of large medical device, pharmaceutical, and healthcare networks get actively engaged in applying VR and AR technology to healthcare problems. Things are moving forward in a very wonderful and rapid pace. Now, probably everyone who's listening to this conference understands that VR technology will be the next computer platform that's used to facilitate how we work, how we socialize, how we shop, how we play. But now is the time for VR technology to surge forward into the enterprise. And with the evolution of new systems like the Pro 2, with much higher visual fidelity for PC VR, or the Focus 3, a new standalone device that makes VR much more accessible for healthcare, the technology is allowing us to move even deeper and more robustly into the medical vertical. So why do we use VR technology, and what makes it so profound? Well, it offers unique capacities. We can slow down and speed up the world, make the simple more complex, or the complex more simple, and we can pace the information to the speed of the user's ability to learn and absorb. We can also provide information in a deeply personal way that has meaning for the user. So the fact that we now can provide information in a controlled, adjustable manner allows us to make a system that is uniquely capable. As a result, VR technologies are being used across the enterprise, and with one specific area that I think will achieve prominence very soon is the application of VR technologies to healthcare. Empowered by the digital health revolution, VR and AR technologies are already making a significant impact. It's the full stack of healthcare that we see VR and AR technologies being applied to, ranging from prevention wellness, much more objective clinical assessments, more robust functional training, improved methods to facilitate compliance and adherence in healthcare. Healthcare is not easy, and VR technology allows us to create systems that have greater engagement to facilitate people participating in their healthcare journey with the clinicians. Also, new ways for us to reach underserved populations. We see more than 200 emerging VR companies that are targeting multiple clinical sectors in healthcare. So let me spend a moment talking about the neuroscience of how VR promotes behavioral change. VR systems are particularly powerful at activating neuroplastic changes in the brain because we can activate the brain's reward systems and pleasure centers. We can also shorten the feedback loop, show progress in a dynamic way, which reinforces learning and change. We can also leverage the mirror neuron systems of the brains, the systems in our brains that allow us to understand and to have empathy for other people. And we can use those systems to also help us have empathy for our future self. VR technology is much more effective than standard imaginable or in vivo exposure therapies to address behavioral healthcare problems. VR floods our system, the visual system, the thalamus and the cortex, activating both subcortical threat detection systems and response pathways, as well as the cortical conscious pathways. In this way, it has much more impact than the standard imaginal therapy or in vivo exposure therapy paradigms. One thing that I find very exciting is that VR technology allows us to leverage the power of story. Our brains are wired to be receptive to narrative stories. Most often in healthcare, we don't have time for that sort of contextual situation. However, with the use of VR technology, we can apply a story arc, a narrative to an individual's healthcare journey. And this allows us to promote more active engagement, improved understanding, provide greater context and relevance, create greater engagement and participation of the user. By building a story around and using VR as a platform to do that, we can facilitate greater adherence and greater participation by individuals in their healthcare solution. One aspect where VR technology is already having significant impact is on training. We see fantastic systems for clinical skill training, for surgical skill training, interpersonal skill training, training people to work as teams, and also allowing clinicians to understand the patient's point of view and facilitate understanding of the patient's experience in our healthcare system. Arama VR and Fundamental VR are groups showing great utility of using VR as a way to do surgical procedure training with both haptic feedback of the surgical procedure by Fundamental VR, and with Arama VR leveraging the power of having distributed teams to work on training how to do a complex surgical procedure. We've seen great systems to help take very complex anatomy and physiology systems and facilitate their training using VR systems, such as systems developed by Luxonic. We've evolved virtual patients for clinical skill training. And one of their very important uses is to help clinicians prepare and train for delivering bad news. It's the sort of situation where if you have to tell a family or an individual about a terminal illness, you don't want to learn that challenging situation on the job. Being able to rehearse and practice and get guidance in advance is very important and allowed by current VR systems. Another key area where VR systems are having a significant impact on healthcare is improved and more objective clinical assessments. We've seen improvements in neuropsychological assessments, measurements for activities of daily living, measurements in physical medicine, occupational and physical therapy, and also in a zone which is often difficult to come up with objective assessments in the field of psychiatry and psychology, VR has made a big difference. For example, we now have new approaches for cognitive assessment. We can create culturally diverse, age-appropriate, but standardized environments for neurocognitive evaluation. These can mitigate the need for traditional paper and pencil tests, which are more subjective and can provide more robust assessments of cognitive function. We're also seeing the combination of biosensing technology with VR technology so that we can do a better job of measuring and indexing cognitive and emotional states. We're seeing new approaches to cognitive assessment by coming up with combinations of VR and AR technology at the level of primary care. Another zone where VR is having a significant impact on medical care is improved clinical interventions. Here are some examples. We use VR right now to plan a surgical procedure and share that plan with the patient in advance of the surgery so the patient can better understand what will be happening as they go through a neurosurgical procedure, for example, and perhaps even participate in some of the choices and decision-making that the surgeon needs to consider as they design their surgical approach. We've also seen some great breakthroughs in the application of VR technology to stroke and traumatic brain injury rehabilitation. One area of tremendous impact is in mental health care. Our mental health care system in general has been backlogged, especially with the current pandemic. And it's often very difficult and there's often a long wait before an individual can get access to help in the mental health care arena. VR and AR technologies help facilitate access and provide much more robust assessments and interventions in behavioral medicine. For example, VR has been used very extensively as a way of mitigating both acute and chronic pain. VR is being used to treat post-traumatic stress, to help with phobias and other anxiety disorders. We use VR to help people who are struggling with addictions by teaching them refusal skills and improving situational confidence. There's a very long list of where VR has been applied to mental and behavioral health problems. Some examples are helping with eating disorders or psychosis, obsessive compulsive disorders, phobias, social anxiety disorders, depression, autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit disorder, a very long list. And there's been a tremendous utility of applying VR and AR technology for senior care, not just for the therapeutic applications, but also as part of palliative care to help seniors who are isolated connect with other family members or go to some place that they've always wanted to go to through the power of a virtual reality platform. We're also seeing VR as it's applied to health and wellness. Promoting exercise and weight management, helping people manage stress, helping people address mood and depression. We have also seen VR applied as a very effective disability interface to help people with a permanent disability interact in a more robust way with the work environment or the social environment. And of course, VR technology is very useful as a telemedicine platform. We're seeing the evolution of systems that aren't just used in the hospital, but systems that, when the patient's discharged, can be brought home and be used as a way of post-discharge patient management. In summary, I'm very excited for the application of VR technology, in particular for senior care. Given the crisis we see looming of not having adequate caregivers support our aging seniors and the concomitant increase in neurodegenerative disease and stroke and chronic pain problems and mobility problems, we need to develop new interventions and we need to do it now. And nicely enough, many of the applications of VR technology can be used to address this looming healthcare crisis. It's very exciting to see how VR technology is currently being deployed, but you've probably heard the expression, the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. And that's the situation we're in right now with VR technology. It is already being very effectively used to address several significant healthcare problems in a very effective way. But it's mostly at the early adopter phase, the pioneers who are embracing new systems to improve care and reduce costs. However, because VR technology is so profound in terms of its effectiveness and its ability to reduce cost and reach people in underserved populations, I believe we will soon see VR technology expand from the early adopter phase and soon become part of the usual and customary aspect of healthcare. I look forward to that stage, and thank you for inviting me to be part of your conference today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to ViveCon. I am incredibly excited today to be here with a distinguished panel to share with you all about how VR is pioneering different applications in the healthcare medical sector. And this is really one of the areas that make each of us here at VIVE wake up every morning believing in what we do, because it's already bringing such tangible impact to society and people's lives and patients' outcome. And this is that for sure, by far, one of my favorite topics, and some of my favorite people in the industry pioneering VR's use in healthcare and medical field are here today with me. So I can't wait to introduce them to you and look forward to a very fruitful discussion about VR and healthcare. From using VR for stroke patient recovery, to molecular engineering for drug discovery, to radiology visualization and hyper-realistic medical training. All of these different applications are wide and diverse, and they all continue to inspire us here at VIVE for to continue to push the envelope of this technology to make sure that these benefits are understood by healthcare providers, by patients, by the world, so we can continue to accelerate the adoption of this technology. Without further ado, I love for my panelists to give a brief introduction of themselves and what they do, and then we'll follow up by discussion. So, Gita.
Thank you so much, Pearlie. My name is Gita Berry. I am the Executive Vice President and General Manager of Real System at a public medical device global healthcare company named Penumbra. We have been in the medical device space, the healthcare space, since 2004. So we've been working in the healthcare space now for almost 17 years. And our goal, we really started with the goal to help stroke patients. We were founded, our co-founders looked at this technology, looked at the stroke patients and said, there's a lot that we need to do for these patients. So we have a wide range of interventional device products that are aimed around helping stroke. We've expanded into other areas of interventions, which also include a lot of technologies for peripheral interventions, as well as coronary interventions. And so you're thinking right now, what is this medical device professional doing in the wonderful space with VR and tech? And really, we came into the world of VR by thinking about how can we continue to help stroke patients. And so Penumbra has embarked on this new journey around how do we continue our success with stroke patients, really extending from the acute setting into the rehabilitation setting as well. And so we're really excited to be here. We'll share more about what Penumbra is about, but thank you again, Pearlie, for this opportunity.
Thanks, Pearlie. It's a pleasure to be here. So, hi everyone. I'm Mike Wesolowski, the CEO and co-founder of Luxonic. Globally, we spend about $540 billion on radiology services, but over half the world's population doesn't have access to even basic X-ray or ultrasound. So at Luxonic, really our mission is to solve this problem and problems like this by using immersive technologies to improve access to healthcare. So if you've ever gone to go get an X-ray, once your scan is complete, that digital data passes through several systems and ends up in the office of a radiologist. We call that office the radiology reading room. And radiologists spend about 90% of their day in that room reviewing your medical images. But the reading room itself is a fixed piece of infrastructure. It's expensive to set up and to maintain, and it hasn't really changed much in the last 30 years. So if we want to improve access to global radiology services, we need to be able to scale not only our medical imaging equipment, but we need to scale this last mile of medical imaging infrastructure, the radiology reading room. And that's exactly what we've done with our first product, CVER. We've taken all of the components, all of the software, all the hardware that you would normally find in a radiology reading room, and we virtualized them. We've created a digital twin of the radiology workflow in VR. So with a VR headset, a radiologist really has now the freedom to work anytime, anywhere at a fraction of the cost. So we've already launched several CVER modules and have pilots at major radiology institutions in Canada and the US. And over the next year, we'll be continuing our rollout across North America. In closing, at Luxonic, we're solving complex problems in medicine and building the immersive future of healthcare.
Well, first, thank you, Pearlie, and the awesome team at HCC VIVE. Thanks so much for including us in this very exciting opportunity. So happy to be here. Folks, my name is Paulo Cotillo. I'm the CEO and Chief Innovation Officer at Arama VR. We're a deep technology spatial computing company based out of Geneva, Switzerland. And what we've built is the world's most intelligent VR training simulation software in healthcare training. Our focus is really on the accelerated pace of human learning in medical education.
Hey there, I'm Steve McCloskey, CEO and co-founder of Nanome. So here at Nanome, we've been actually creating virtual reality tools for changing the way we interact with science. So traditionally, science is complicated, hard to understand. Maybe there's really tough problems such as the COVID-19 pandemic, where you need a lot of people to work together. And so what we've done is we created a virtual reality platform. Of course, we're part of the ViveX family and love running on the HCC hardware. But you put on the VR headset and you're in a molecular world. So that means you can pull up structures like the spike protein from the coronavirus, and then think of ways on how to target it and develop novel therapeutics around that structural information. So virtual reality has been really important for the scientific and medical community for a very long time. But Nanome, we're actually going and commercializing that. We've been working with a number of the top pharmaceutical companies since 2017, including Novartis. And right now we're in half of the top 20 global pharmaceutical companies, alongside many other biotech companies and universities as well.
That's super exciting, and there was a reason that each of you was invited to this panel to share your excitement and also your dedication throughout the very many years in pioneering VR's use in healthcare and medicine. When we first, I think I speak for probably all of you, that there was a eureka moment when you first go into VR and just have your mind completely blown away, and then start imagining, what could this amazing technology do when intersect with different type of applications? For Steve, I know you were in school, you're in campus, you're thinking this makes perfect sense when you can visualize chemistry and moleculars and proteins inside a fully immersive environment, making it that much easier for people to work together, understand, and collaborate. And so this has been, I think, a very profound type of personal journey in connecting the promise and your imagination. However, not everyone has been able to go through that just yet. I'd love to hear from each of you how you are using your own personal journey or data points, proof points to pitch to your customers or your end users the benefit of using VR in advancing your respective fields.
In the space of rehab, right? So many patients, and I can give example of patient after patient. No one thinks rehab is fun. Our therapists do everything they possibly can. We have incredibly talented physical therapists and occupational therapists. But ultimately, you're going to a place 3 times a week, 1 time a week, 4 times a week for a session. And at some point, fear sets in. Fear of, can I do this movement? Fear of, is this going to be painful? And what VR offers is it offers this great opportunity for us to bring a lot of the same activities and exercises to the patient in a totally different way, in a way that removes those fears because it changes their environment. It changes their concerns around, can I reach that far? Can I move my arm this way? I can give a great example of a patient, Karen, we just recently featured her, and she had been in a car accident in 2018. She had then had shoulder surgery in 2020, and she had been in conventional therapy, which works great. If only you can engage the patient in conventional therapy. And so we saw Karen start to plateau out in her rehab, even though she had more work to go. Her therapist wanted more from her. And so what we saw after just a month of using the Real system, which uses the incredible VIVE technology, right? What we saw was this incredible opportunity for Karen to continue her progress. We saw further success, and she's really enjoying the rehab experience. She's totally engaged again in what she's experiencing with her therapist. And so I think that's a great example. There's a lot of research on VR in the healthcare space that says you can do great things for patients and take advantage of the neuroplasticity of the brain. It's just a matter of building those experiences and having the right technology to help them be successful. And so we point to those proof points. We point to the research, we point to the patients who are experiencing the technology, and from there, we're able to help so many people, and that's the path that we're on today.
Gita, you brought something very...
Sorry, Paolo.
Yeah, no, I wanted to add on to that. You brought something one of the very cool things about VR and experiential technologies is the sense of not only embodiment, but the fulfillment of being in a scalable, safe environment, right? That application is so necessary in the learning environment, specifically in medical education, because one, medical education, as we know, it's a very long, costly process, and the accessibility of it and the repeatability of it doesn't allow, there's only X amount of times that you could cut, tear, drill into a cadaver, right? Or be in that clinical rotation that, in the current pandemic environment, everyone can't be on site, right? So if we allow our learners to be in that safe, repeatable environment and take it a step further outside of a classroom setting, outside of passive observation, if we could interact and provide our learners a deeper type of interaction and a greater sense of emotional response in interaction with that medical education that's so complex, that's the type of environment that we're producing with our software, right? And in turn, experiencing and validating increased, accelerated knowledge acquisition, longer memory retention. Ultimately, we're training better healthcare workers for today, for tomorrow, right?
But when you're making that pitch, Paolo, to your medical schools and medical institutions to use Orama's hyper-realistic medical simulation surgeon training tools, do they ever pose a question mark? What is the return on investment for me? This seems like an expensive set of technology to adopt. Have you produced, or has your customers produced some of these proof points and return on investment data that makes this an easy and smooth sailing sail for adoption?
Well, the problems that we're solving are multidimensional, but very in sync with one another. These medical institutions and training centers, economically, it's been very hard in this pandemic to bring everyone on site, on location, right? When you're a healthcare student, you have X amount of hours to fulfill in live didactic classes, but unfortunately, that's not able to happen, right? So to be able to have a mechanism for continuity of medical education deployment, this is somewhat a no-brainer for your medical schools, right? But secondly, we want to focus on the learner outcomes, the ROI. So we're going to close out this year with about 4 different clinical trials, basically validating the efficacy of our software. One of our early adopters at NYU Langone School of Medicine, we provided our software to their surgical cohort, just 2 20-minute sessions in our VR simulations. That short immersion produced an 8% surgical technical proficiency, an uptick. What we want to do is continuously validate these efficacy studies, but I think on a macro form, the whole industry, as far as medical education, has looked at VR and AR and XR technologies and says, and to do this is no longer a nice to have. This is a must to have to evolve. If our stakeholders are not going down this route, this is another step towards obsolescence, right? They need this to continue not only their business, their economics, but be able to provide and create a value for their learners, their students, right? And training. We're at the perfect time. This is the perfect time for everyone to be here.
Are the global pharmaceutical customers finding it as no-brainer application to use VR for drug discovery, Steve?
Yeah, it's been kind of mixed. So yeah, there's people like me who, yeah, super passionate, absolutely wanted it. I thought this was like the must-have tool that, like, you know, I was a nano engineer at UC San Diego. And so personally, like, I really wanted to be a nano engineer. And it's one of those things that's kind of impossible in the real life because, like, you pick something up and it's much, much larger than the nano scale. So you can't see these types of things. So yeah, I really wanted to zoom down on the nanoscale with the computational data and be able to, you know, run simulations, spin up computation more effectively, and get hands-on when designing at the nanoscale. So yeah, I saw it as a no-brainer. Oddly enough, I actually tried VR in the 90s when I was a kid. I think I was like 7 or something like that. And that memory just kind of stuck with me. So when I was, you know, seeing all these things that really just fell flat, literally, like, you know, two-dimensional graphics and chalkboards, things like that. Like, I wanted something better. I didn't quite know what it was until, you know, I got into VR in the 2010s again. But it was just immediately obvious when you put on the VR headset that, like, this is the ultimate interface for anything 3D, and, like, this is the way it has to be done. And I'd say in pharmaceuticals, you know, there's early adopters. You know, Novartis, we published a paper with them in the Journal of Molecular Graphics and Modeling. You know, they believe they're very much on board. They see all the benefits. They're very much seeing the future of the entire industry shifting towards that as well. But you know, there's going to be other companies out there that are a little bit slower to adopt. We have a few case studies out with like Nimbus Therapeutics and LifeArc that show kind of like putting your first foot in and testing the waters and getting a feel for VR, and then really, you know, liking it and getting all the tremendous value and saving money and having more people work together effectively. So I think that, you know, it's going to be the full spectrum. You know, early adopters that see it, that love it, and we're definitely seeing that in pharma. The middle sort of people that, like, you know, are convinced once a few other people put out case studies and papers showing how awesome it is. And then there's going to be the laggards that are, you know, maybe investing resources into other things right now, you know, not investing into VR yet. And I think that they'll just be a little bit late to the game.
How about Mike? How are the radiology suites reacting to your solution?
Yeah, so, you know, we've had a tremendously positive response to what we've been building. You know, a few of the panelists have touched on it already, but, you know, immersive technology really improves access to things like medical education, but also in our case to workflow. In many places around the world, this workflow doesn't even exist. And so being able to take an all-in-one headset and drop it anywhere in the world and provide a radiology clinic, it really provides a huge amount of value. But closer to home, you know, we've had a tremendous response. We have clinical trials happening and research happening at institutions in the U.S. like Cleveland Clinic and Mass General, really looking at different value propositions for this new workflow. You know, whether that's interprofessional collaboration within radiology, radiology with other subspecialties, or radiology education, which has been completely disrupted because of COVID. You know, we're seeing a great response so far to this idea of being able to virtualize a workflow and bring it anywhere, really. So I think, you know, that's where you know, we focus, but there are huge opportunities for this technology in many areas of medicine.
Thank you, Mike. In many ways, COVID-19 has changed everything, right? That in every aspect of our lives. And for me personally, one of the silver linings would be the forced acceleration of remote work lifestyle, and which might very well be the future of work. The entire world has been forced to adapt at a very furious speed, and a continuity, which Paolo mentioned earlier, became very important. For example, when clinics are closed, stroke patients are not able to access a physical therapist in person, students are not able to come back to campus, continue their education. The scientists around the world are not able to collaborate in person no longer. And this is when VR and having a spatial collaboration tool all of a sudden becomes very essential and very profound in advancing a lot of different aspects that was disrupted by this pandemic. I'd love to hear from each of you on how you've observed the pandemic has accelerated your respective pursuit in your field, or other type of observations, acceleration, slowdown, hesitation. What are you observing?
Maybe I can jump in here. You know, so much of radiology education happens in the radiology reading room. It's so much of it is over the shoulder. You know, you have a trained radiologist reviewing images, and right next to them, typically in the reading room, you have the radiology resident or a medical student. Because of COVID, that completely shut down. So much of radiology education has been diminished because of COVID. You know, and being in a virtual reading room and being able to connect radiologists and students, radiologists and residents within that same workflow, we've had such an amazing response to having that presence within that virtual space. You know, we've had radiologists who said, oh, okay, I really get this. This is so much like being in a real reading room. The adoption is very quick, and I think it has accelerated the adoption, at least of our sort of collaborative workflow.
If I can jump in, I think what we've seen is that, and just like every single one of us, right, the access to healthcare has been challenged during COVID-19. You've not just had the, can you get into the hospital? What is the hospital focused on, right, with all the COVID patients that absolutely need treatment? There's also a lot of fear of, can I go to the hospital? Will I be safe, right? Or will I be exposed to the virus? And so I think what we've seen with COVID is this open idea, this door opening around telehealth solutions, and a lot of the challenges with telehealth and a lot of opportunities for what VR can offer for telehealth that you can't do over the phone or just through a computer or through a standard camera setup. And so it's introduced a whole new world of opportunities that absolutely have been there and available in VR, but really I think kickstarted the conversation, much to like Mike, what you've just described, which is maybe this wasn't something that everyone could wrap their head around before. Gosh, no pun intended, but something that really the value of the technology, the value of having those capabilities really is at the forefront of a lot of the healthcare providers' minds. Healthcare is a space that thankfully we want a lot of technology, we want a lot of technology advancement. And at the same time, as patients, all of us who are under the care of a physician, you don't want it to go too fast. Because there's a lot of knowledge that comes from experience. And so I think the pandemic has given us lots of opportunities to innovate. And I think we see that in our space, and I'm not surprised to hear about it in others, because there's a huge need to innovate in this space, and VR brings that.
Yeah, it was an interesting reset. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of ideas that we were playing around with in the 2010s. And Pearlie, I don't know if you remember these conversations. Yeah, we talked about the need for, you know, if something bad were to happen,
Yes.
like a pandemic, like virus, like how do we get a bunch of scientists all work together to help solve it? And, you know, ideas like that sounded crazy in 2017, 2018, but we built the infrastructure for it anyways. But it wasn't really like implemented. And I think the canvas was really reset on like, what does it look like to everyone work together during the pandemic? Because we had these far-fetched ideas where everyone would be in their living room or wherever it is, put on a VR headset, connect globally, and like be compelled to work together to solve these huge scientific problems. And the pandemic was a catalyst. You know, on day one, January 1st of 2020, I remember like seeing the news articles like, oh, you know, this virus is happening, like this could be real. And we tried to reach out to our global network of scientists, and see who was interested in it at the time. Found some people in Australia, started working with others in Europe. Big pharma companies like Novartis started putting in their own efforts. And then it was just, well, who could we help? How do we help them? And like, how do we make it easy for them? So getting them set up at home, helping work with like a virtual private network, like VPN solutions, so they could connect in their internal like company firewalls from home. So that was another challenge on the enterprise level, but it was nothing we couldn't work through. And at the end of it, we actually had real drugs developed by real scientists, or sorry, real like molecular entities. There's this whole classification of what's a drug, what's not a drug. But we had molecular candidates that could go into the trial soon, that scientists designed using virtual reality, using Nanome, and getting in there and analyzing the protein structures and designing chemicals. So it's going to be awesome if that ends up saving us from future SARS pandemic, or maybe some mutations or whatever may happen. We have backups of these antiviral therapeutics. So yeah, it was just great that we were able to help with that, and we're able to continue help with many other fights that the science community has.
I want to personally be in the room when you and some of the scientists you're working with first time to come in touch visually, to come up and personal with the coronavirus, and see what a visceral impact it must be to be able to observe something so deadly, so profoundly impacting every one of us in such a proximity, and then collaborate around it, and all the different variants. I can only imagine that they were all dreaming about working in this context. Such visual memory of each of these variants in the virus. It's very different from working with the flat screen and understanding chemistry and moleculars in that way. And that applies to medical education too, and learning about surgery and many other parts of medical education. Paulo, you were going to add here.
Yeah, well, COVID, outside of the very pervasive losses and real pain that we all went through, and we're very fortunate to be able to be standing up and breathing today, we saw this and reacted, and really how we didn't forecast it, but how we reacted to this was, when I saw the headlines that medical universities were accelerating the graduation of their medical students, I said, I looked at this and I said, this is unprecedented. What does this really mean? This really means is that your pre-med students are graduated and ready to apply healthcare applications to real patients, right? A lot of those live didactic kind of instructor-based training time has been lost, right? But the push towards more healthcare professionals in the field working was a bottleneck, right? So how we kind of reacted to this was that we put together in under about 25 days, we built a PPE donning and doffing and nasal swab testing virtual reality simulation, and we pushed it out to the marketplace for free. So in this case, what was driving this was that there was a call to action for even your retired healthcare professionals to come back and do basic treatment to COVID patients, right? And part of that continued education that's necessary, that has to be a reminder that the VR simulation could do exponentially, is that how do I put on masks? How do I wash my hands properly? All these type of things that had to be included in that process of accelerating, new or old healthcare professionals back into activation, right? And what was amazing about that is that we had thousands of downloads, but basically we were able to react with our software and turn that simulation around in under 25 days. So we worked day and night to get that out, and I'm positive it made some difference and created some value in someone's healthcare education very quickly. Yeah.
I think we're all right there with you, Paulo. I think all of us in healthcare, ultimately it comes down to how are we helping, whether we're helping, practitioners or patients. I think I think we all shared a similar response to the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish that we can, be sharing this type of impact that we see in real life and how we're feeling about the potential and promise more broadly with the world. And that's why we're really doing this. As I was saying, most of the world still has very little idea about how to get started with VR, even with all these description of amazing benefits. How would you suggest your to-be customers or people that are listening in the audience today to get started with VR? All these complications around the system, the standalone PC VR, whatnot. What would be your advice for the world out there to adopt VR, and what gets you really excited in the next generation hardware? Whether those that you're hearing, you're seeing us announce today, or elsewhere in the industry, what gets you excited in the evolution of your respective pursuits?
Well, I'll start in this is just a market feedback for me. When I'm looking at the hardware space, right, and seeing how, back in the 90s, like VR headsets were tens of thousands of dollars, right? And weighed 75 pounds on your head that you had to kind of fixate on some kind of rig behind you. The hardware capabilities have exponentially increased as far as form factor and economics, right? These headsets are less expensive or just as par as a mobile phone, right? Which increases the adoption of them, the accessibility. So those type of macro kind of evolutions help drive VR. Couple that with very robust and complex superior software and content. I think that one, the market is missing a lot of content as of right now, and that's what the market needs, is to ingest quality, high fidelity content. The problem with content is it's a very costly process, just like medical education, right? And to build these simulations, it takes months, right? And what we've been able to do with Arama is that with our proprietary software development kit, we've been able to engineer and prototype these simulations within a matter of 45 days, which for me is not enough. I want to really optimize that development time into a matter of 48 hours. And that way, we can potentially flood the market, positively, with high quality VR simulation content that's necessary to be coupled with superior hardware HMDs that HTC is producing, right?
Yeah, for our uses, I really love the standalones. In some use cases, I'd say like, if you want a really big, huge protein structure, something like a full virus, right? If it's super big, it's not going to run on the standalone headset. So we kind of need to explain that to our customers. But generally, when dealing with a single protein and having a chemist get in there and design a chemical, the standalones function really great for all those use cases. And that's been able to unlock huge potential in our industry, because it used to be, these dedicated biologists that would be super into the structure, and they would get the computer set up, and it's somewhat of an ordeal to get that all situated with IT and big pharma. But then when you introduce standalone headsets, it's much easier. Once you get them online, connected to the network, all the chemists could just connect, throw on the headset, be in the virtual world, not worry about multiple connections and wires and configurations and sound settings on the computer versus sound settings on the headset. So I think that the advent of the standalone headsets really just streamlined the whole process on both the enterprise level with real scientists as well as education. And Harvard actually recently released a paper showing how they're using VR and Nanome to teach all their chemistry students. So they had like 30 standalone headsets that they were kind of like swapping out and recycling to different students pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, they ended up actually kind of mailing out the headsets to certain students, things like that. We've seen various implementations of giving the headsets to the students, having them try to borrow headsets during the pandemic. But yeah, in general, I think that the standalone has just unlocked huge potential everywhere. Everyone could just have their own headset, like they have their own cell phone, and then boom, you're just able to connect with wonderful apps like the ones we see here for medical tech, ones like ours for learning science as well as doing science, and maybe even participating in crowdsourced drug discovery projects to help cure real diseases. So yeah, it's really amazing to see the great tech coming out of hardware providers like HTC. yeah, we don't make hardware. We just try to make great software, but we like running on great hardware. So thanks.
For us, with the Real System, right, at Penumbra, so much of what we're doing is we're introducing VR to people for the first time. So much of our experience is the broader population. If you're coming in to your rehab setting, you may never have seen VR. You may not be a classic gamer. You may not be sort of the typical market that might be even familiar with the concept of virtual reality. And so for us, certainly the standalone headset is a huge part of our capability, but it's enhanced by the immersive experience. And the importance of that immersive experience in terms of whether it's the latency, whether it's the resolution of the display. There's so many features that a first-time user needs to really understand, because this is their healthcare experience. This is their rehab session. And so much of the features of the system, as we continue to see those improvements in the tech, will only mean more people are exposed to virtual reality and have those experiences to understand the true value. And so we're really excited about what HTC is developing, the features that are going into these enterprise headsets, because for us, that is the first time someone is going to experience VR. And so there's so much opportunity to have that experience be a great first experience, and what we can deliver with content, the kinds of exercises, the kinds of experiences and activities that they can have, all comes from that tech. So we're really thankful for everything that HTC is developing and can't wait to see what comes next.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to echo the sentiments of everyone here. I think for us at Luxonic, you know, the standalone headsets from HTC, I think, are going to ease adoption considerably with our end users. Having that contained experience, being able to really refine the user experience is extremely important for us. If you know, workflow is king in radiology, and if your workflow is slowed down at all, your technology is not going to be adopted. So coupling with HTC's hardware is you know, in our software, it makes a lot of sense. But you know, I think there's the great thing about working with HTC also is there's a spectrum of headsets. You know, on the PCVR side, we see huge applicability for more complicated workflows in radiology, like 3D visualization, for example. You know, if you're visualizing an MRI in real time as a 3D volume, that takes a lot of processing power. And so being able to offer that spectrum of here's your standalone for this type of workflow, and here's PCVR that can enable, you know, more advanced workflows, it's fantastic to have that in a single partner for sure.
Thank you all so much. I wish we can continue to sit here and discuss for another 2 hours, but I think the clock is telling me that it's time for the closing argument. I would love to hear from each of you in your wildest dream, your personal goal for your businesses in the next 12 to 14 months, 12 to 24 months in seeing your industry adopt VR. What do you foresee happening? What are you most excited about? What would be that ultimate goal 1 or 2 years from now? Where do you want your industry to be?
So I can start, guys. My big audacious goal is that, which is we could realize in the next 12 to 18 months, is that your non-technical market, your medical educators and training institutions that have zero access to their own engineering staff or development team are able to produce the type of complexity and interactiveness of the VR simulations that we are building on their own without the dependency of studios or content creators. So what that really looks like for me is just as easy as we put together curriculums and slideshows on Google Slides or PowerPoint. That type of mechanism, I want to empower the millions of other potential medical VR technologies that have zero technology background to be able to produce these simulations on their own within a matter of hours with a drag and drop, plug and play type of software. That is a game changer for me. And I think that is the one small piece way of Rama, how we're going to kind of bring VR to mass adoption to where it's needed most in healthcare education. That's my dream.
And from there, that goes to patients. For us at Penumbra with the Real System, this is all about patients and how many patients have access to this incredible technology over this period of time. There have been folks researching like Walter Greenleaf and Skip Rizzo and Jeremy Bailenson, who have been researching VR for 25 plus years, understanding how this tech can come to the healthcare space. We want to honor them. We want to bring all of that research to full fruition such that we have patients truly benefiting from the technology itself. So when I look at the next 12 to 18 months, it's patients, and it's patients in person, it's patients via telehealth, it is patients, it is as many people, 10-fold, 20-fold increases in where we are today in terms of the number of patients that we're able to help with this technology, because ultimately, that's what we're all aimed here to do. We're here in healthcare to advance healthcare, and that comes down to the patients in the system, which is every single one of us. I want all of us to have access to this, and all of our loved ones, anyone who's had an injury, like Karen I talked about in the very beginning, we want every one of those patients to be able to excel and reach their full potential. And for each patient, that's different, but as many patients as we can help is our goal in the next 12 to 18 months. And I can't wait to update you all. It's going to be fun.
For us, we're going to continue our expansion in North America, but, over, let's say, the 18 to 24 months, our goal really is to start helping people around the world to be able to drop that first virtual radiology clinic in a community that hasn't had access to radiology services. That's our real goal, whether that's somewhere in northern Canada or in Kenya. We have a huge potential with this technology to really do a lot of good, and that's our goal, to continue doing good with immersive tech.
Yeah, a few years ago, it's really hard to kind of like visualize and conceptualize what the digital transformation would look like. It was kind of like a thing for me where I knew at some point in the 2020s, things were going to go digital, but I didn't think it would happen this abruptly so soon. But now it's been at the forefront of everybody's mind. Digital transformation during the pandemic, like it happened, or at least it started happening. So I think over the next 12 to 24 months, continuing that transformation for the pharma and biotech industries, as well as all the universities that are also adopting that. The pharma industry actually follows an inverse of Moore's law, where Moore's law would be after every 2 years or so, the number of transistors doubles, roughly around there. Well, every few years in pharma, it becomes more expensive to develop a drug. You're looking at $2 billion 1 year and then $3 billion in a few years from there. So it really is an industry ripe for digital transformation and just adopting new technology. And that doesn't just happen in VR. They're using more complex simulations, more artificial intelligence, machine learning, things like that. But VR is that thing that glues all these digital things together. So we could have VR as that like central interface for understanding all of that. And I think that's going to unlock massive potential for, hopefully, reducing the cost of the drug, getting more, life-saving treatments onto the market. And we hope that, the companies and research institutions that have seen the massive benefits of, global collaborations to rapidly, solve diseases like SARS-CoV-2 virus, COVID-19, if they could apply that to other diseases and continue the momentum and say, oh, we've already gotten SARS-CoV-2, we have, some vaccines, we have antivirals, like hopefully towards the end of this year, it's a lot less pressing than it is at the beginning of 2021 or how it was in 2020. But let's apply that to other areas, neglected tropical diseases. There's many things that are killing people every day. And just because, coronavirus was, probably, one of the worst ones that we've all experienced as a global civilization here, doesn't mean that we should let up off the gas and, somehow stop this huge momentum that we have in that pharmaceutical and biotech world. So yeah, I'm just furthering that momentum and getting more VR into more scientists' hands.
all the inspiration I'm picking up from these closing arguments are the words of empowerment, of informing, educating, improving patient outcome to unleash everyone's full potential, which really reminds me of a little episode where I went to UCSF Children's Hospital locally to meet this 10-year-old patient that had a brain tumor that had to be operated. I went to talk to her about her journey of the fear to understanding what that tumor is like, what treatment is about to happen through the storytelling of virtual reality, where the software was able to translate CT scan and MRI images into a three-dimensional reconstructed brain theater. And the surgeon was able to go in and plan the surgery plan, as well as communicating with the young patient on what's about to happen, eliminating those fears, increasing their surgery success rate. And of course, it was a happy outcome. And when I was talking to the doctor, he was telling me about how, it was hard to communicate with a young patient about what's about to happen. But when she goes into VR and naturally put her hands up to interact and try to touch that tumor, he's in. He's able to get in and communicate with her at her level and tell a story in a way that is profound and not otherwise possible. And so with that, my personal dream would be for HTC VIVE to continue to provide the support to empower as many of you founders, executives, business leaders, creating these incredible solutions, impacting lives in such a profound way, unleashing everyone's full potential. That will be my wildest dream in this journey going forward. With that closing, I thank each of my incredible panelists that continue to inspire me every single day, that I've had the privilege of interacting closely with. And I hope to that many of you will go to their virtual booth here at ViveCon to check out more about what they do and learn about what they're doing. And you can also learn more about our ISV program at our new website, business.vive.com/ISV. And we can't wait to hear from you and continue to support you. And we hope that this VR technology adoption will continue to happen for everyone's benefit. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Oh, and thank you, Pearly and the
Thanks,
VIVE
everyone.
team.
Thank you.
Thank you.